actually, in the gas sector, we've had results from the big gas players, Woodside, Santos, oil search now, haven't we?
And a big new deal announced by Shell, which is moving into retail electricity with its takeover of ERM.
Well, joining us now, top gas analyst Sol Kavanagh from Credit Suisse. Sol, great to have you at the desk.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about this big deal that Shell's got. Looks like they are going into retail.
Indeed, and I suppose it's been a long time coming because this has been flagged almost a couple of years ago, the potential for Shell to do this. Now, if you look at it, it's really part of Shell's strategy globally, where they're transforming themselves from a traditional upstream oil and gas company into an integrated power player. That's part of their decarbonisation push, but also part of a value opportunity they see where they can play all the way through from manufacturing gas on the upstream through to power generation in the retail sector.
Well, I tried to push Zoe Yunovich on this, who runs Shell, a couple of months ago, and she was very careful. But what do you think of the timing of it all? Because it does give them eyes on all the way through, as you say.
I'd see this still as the tip of the sword of what Shell's ambitions are in the power space. If you look at Shell globally, Australia is one of the largest areas of investment in the upstream, and therefore we could see it become also one of the largest areas of investment in power. And this could just be the first step, and then you could start to see Shell build out positions in power generation and then in integrated power trading across the East Coast gas and power market.
Right. Let's go to results, and let's start with Santos. And Kevin Gallagher seems to have had a ripper of a season, and all really about over west with his acquisition of Quadrant. Let's hear from Kevin Gallagher now.
It's been great to see how well we've integrated Quadrant into our WA business, and you can see how that's driving down production cost and driving up our volumes, our sales and production in the West. It's now a very material part of our business. And what's really exciting about it, not only is that integration going well and the operations going well, but we've got some great growth projects like the Dorado project offshore, following the Dorado 1 discovery and the appraisal well earlier this year. And so that's given us a lot of excitement for how big this business can be going forward.
So your thoughts on Gallagher's obvious optimism there, but it's a pretty good result.
Indeed, it was a beat on the result, and talking about the WA acquisition last year, the prize has really turned out to be Dorado here, which is the second well has really helped prove up the size and scope of that play. They're drilling a third well imminently. We get results from that, which can then really firm this towards a development. It's one of the largest oil discoveries in the last 20 years in Australia. All the indications to date have been really positive on it. And that's therefore quite exciting for Santos. Also talking about the integration, he's brought a lot of synergies out of that business. There's quite a lot of people in the Perth office who don't have jobs anymore as a result of that. We've actually increased the amount of synergies we're likely to see from that acquisition going forward. Obviously, what also has been reported over the last couple of weeks is the potential that Conoco might be selling out of Darwin, and so we could see potentially Santos looking to increase its stake in Darwin via another acquisition at some point, as they've done in the West.
OK, North West Shelf generally and development of the North West Shelf. We had Woodside's results, of course. Now, they're trying to get all sorts of parties to help them with their big projects. And Scarborough, I know BHP is being dragging the chain as far as Peter Coleman is concerned. I asked Andrew Mackenzie at BHP what his position was, and let's have a listen to what he said.
I'm not going to comment on commercial negotiations. I prefer them to remain confidential. I just reassure you that we will do the right thing for BHP shareholders and the right thing for Western Australia in order to make this project go ahead. But we obviously have to discuss various shares in the rent that can be extracted through this successful project.
So what do you make of that? Where does this leave Woodside?
Indeed, BHP is being a very cool cat through this negotiation process. It's actually a very delicate environment here. So if you look what's happening at both of Woodside's growth projects, Scarborough and Browse, are dependent on joint venture alignment. And in particular within those joint ventures, there's two outliers which Peter Coleman has referred to as being in La-La land, in which he's referring to BHP and Chevron. The reason this is a delicate situation is you've also got a lot of political pressure being brought to bear to see these developments happen. We're talking about over $90 billion of tax revenue, several thousand jobs, several $1 million in union fees for the WA Labor government, all at stake here. And we've actually seen the government at a very high political level engage with the operators and say, enough's enough. Some of these fields haven't been developed for 30, 40 years, and we want to see development, or we'll consider pulling these leases away from you. And so that's why it's a very delicate political situation, and Woodside's trying to play these politics in its favour to push everybody over the line. But it is complicated when you've got parties who may be in la-la land according to Woodside, but they have veto rights over these projects. And the legacy of Australia's LNG industry is, in the LNG industry in Australia, the boys and girls haven't been very good at sharing their train sets. And that is going to probably require the government to come with a bit of a stick and give them a whack to get them over the line.
Well, speaking of developing assets, in New South Wales, or the East Coast generally, what's going on with some of these long-awaited developments in New South Wales? And also we had this energy report released this week speaking to the possibility of further blackouts in Victoria over the summer.
Well, I guess two issues there. I mean, if you focus on what's happening with onshore gas developments in the east coast of Australia, obviously New South Wales and Victoria have not been allowing that for some time. And Santos and Kevin in particular has really been trying to push Narrabri across the political finishing line, which can then see some domestic gas actually produced in New South Wales, which is almost entirely reliant on imports from other states. This has been almost entirely written off by the market, but we actually think it's got a real shot. Now, it's certainly not there yet, but we're starting to see real momentum build. Kevin Gallagher's done a great job. You're starting to see support by gas buyers. You're starting to see support by the union movement. It's still just a tough political question for the state government because there's a lot of local opposition in the seats up there. But it does seem to be getting more traction than it has in the past, and we maintain the view that Narrabri's got more of a shot now than it ever has over the last few years, and not to quite rule it out yet.